Good luck.
Hello, everybody. My name is Lat Mackey, and this is Sequence Break, episode 30. Composer, and here he is, the one, the only Composer.
Hey guys,
Thanks so much for being here.
you're welcome. Thanks for having me. It's the first time anybody's wanted me to be on a podcast or talk about myself at length without slowly distancing themselves away from me. So, this is great. Thanks for having me.
Well, if you're not familiar with Composer's work, he is a musician. He composes levels and music for games. I mean, we've got a lot to get into. I'm so excited because I have been a fan of your work now probably since, I don't know, about 2016 or 17, whenever I first started finding your Mario Maker 1 stuff. So this is it's very excited to talk to you. Thanks so much for the time. I appreciate it.
Of course.
So let's this has kind of been a thing pretty much every episode nowadays. We start off, what's kind of like your intro to video games? Tell us a little bit about your gaming story.
I was a child of the 80s, and my dad, adolescent years, he always worked for one electronics store or another. He worked for Best Buy at a time when Super Nintendo came out. And so, as far back as like kindergarten, first grade, I think we had a Nintendo, though I think at that point it was more for my parents. Than it was for me.
Right.
But yeah, we had an NES and only a handful of games. But Mario being one of them. We were always much more video game renters than buyers. But yeah, had an NES, and then when the Super Nintendo came out, my dad was working at Best Buy the morning that the Super Nintendo came out and was dealing with the crowds and everything. And he managed to snag us a Super Nintendo. And so, got Super Mario World when that first came out. And then really but then it kind of plateaued. We had the Super Nintendo. Some of the next gen consoles came out, like the PlayStation and things like that. But I don't think I got a PlayStation until like several years after it had come out. So it was pretty SNES exclusive for a large portion of it. I've been a Nintendo baby. I felt like growing up, you were either a kid that had a Genesis or you were a kid that had a Super Nintendo, unless you were that really lucky kid in class whose parents got them both. You were either, one or the other.
Yeah. Oh man, it's so funny too, because especially if like you were a Nintendo kid, you probably had a friend who was a Genesis kid. That was like
right. Yes. And like that was the reason to go over to their house is like, well, I can play all of you come over to my place, we'll play the Super Nintendo games. I'll go over to your place. The Genesis games. So I was always Mario over Sonic, for that reason.
No, totally right there with you. We were NES in the 80s and stuff like that. And I found out that my parents were closeted gamers. Like I woke up one night and I find my parents are playing our Game Boys and going to town on Tetris. I wonder if yourself, I mean, did you actually then get a chance to, did you have to like share time with your dad playing the games or anything like that? Or were you guys pretty good?
No. I was actually thinking of a similar story. I remember waking up one night. It had to have been like first grade because of the house that we were in at the time. But like waking up and like seeing my parents like sitting like crisscross, on the floor because you could only go as far away from the console as the controller would let you go.
Right.
The controller cord, and like sitting there at night. And of course, it's like I'm thinking it's middle of the night, but it's probably like 10 o'clock or something like that. Right. And like seeing them play like TMNT or whatever, and I'm like, what are they doing playing my Nintendo? Like not even having like the frame of mind to think that, my parents being in their 20s at the time would also want to play video games, and I think it was more so my dad than my mom, but yeah, I totally had that moment as well. For Nintendo, for me, it was, we had Super Mario Brothers 1, Super Mario Brothers 3. I don't think we owned the second one. I had my cousins that had it, but so like I have fond memories of like waking up as a child when like you're not old enough to be responsible for helping out with like mowing the lawn and so like my only responsibility on Saturday morning is like get up and see how quickly I can my brother and I can get through Super Mario Brothers 3. Castlevania was also a big one for me, the original Castlevania games. So yeah, those were some early Nintendo games. But like I said, we didn't have a ton of money to, because that's the crazy thing about video games is like they were $60 when I was a kid. They're $60 now. I mean, as far as, lack of inflation goes. And so, yeah, we were always big game renters. One Christmas, parents were like, oh, you have 25 games under the Christmas tree. And we're like, what? No way. And it was like a gift card for like 25 game rentals or whatever. But, that's what we did. We'd go to a video store down the street and, So yeah, owned a couple of games, but mostly renters.
So I got to ask you, I only recently have I gone back and beat the NES Castlevania games, and I got to tell you, as an adult who speedruns games, it was a challenge to beat all 3 of these games. Were you able to beat any of the Castlevania games as a kid? I'm curious.
No, I honestly, I think, I feel like I would have had recollection of doing it, like, I think that you were just happy to, play until you game overed. And then, because at the time, you didn't know you could have it any better, you didn't know that you could have a game that didn't have like punishing end game mechanics or, and so, I know that we beat, I can think of games for like Super Nintendo that we played and beat and everything, but like those early Castlevania games, because gosh, when did Super Nintendo come out? I'm even trying to think of what grade I would have been in at the time, like 3rd grade, 2nd grade, something like that.
Oh man.
I remember loving those games and like loving the music in them and everything, and like, the Ninja Gaiden and the Castlevania and stuff like that, and like loving the world of the game and just sort of accepting the fact that like it was punishingly difficult because, I at least enjoyed the world of the game itself,
That's something that struck me right immediately about Castlevania was I enjoyed the gameplay tremendously. I thought it was so much fun, but the music, the soundtrack, just like it almost hits you in the face right as immediately as you turn on a Castlevania game. And I can, maybe because I'm an adult now, but I appreciate so much all that goes into making that whole thing work together. And so I'm glad you mentioned that, the world and the music gets to you as well.
Yeah. And it's crazy to think of at the time, like, those people making deadlines to try and get those games out, not really know, like they don't have you can't rely on, oh, well, look at what this studio did 5 years, they're the ones carving that path out and dealing with people who don't know what it's like to make a game, but have a deadline set in place and, trying to meet those deadlines. And it's crazy what they were able to do. And and how much sound you could get out of an 8-bit system,
For real, like, oh man, it's super impressive how within the limitations of an 8-bit or a 16-bit console, some of these soundtracks are so like there's so many wonderful soundtracks I've listened to now on Super Nintendo, and it's interesting playing through these games with headphones on nowadays. I feel like I get a little bit more immersed in the sound that maybe I did with my CRT and my cheap ass speaker that was coming out of that at the time. So
and I think I was just going to say, I think that really, the fact that you had to make a piece of music that could only be 60, 90 seconds long, it had to be dynamic enough that you could listen to it for 30, 40 minutes, like as you're like dying over and over in the level, or, in the case of like a Mario game, that music gets reused stage to stage. And like, that's a very specific skill set to have, I think, as a composer, is to be able to make something that is catchy, that's got a great hook, that's, got a great toe tap to it, something that's a bop or whatever the kids say these days. But that has that longevity where it's like, yeah, I could listen to this for 30 minutes on repeat and not get sick of it,
Absolutely. I think thanks for sharing the gaming history with you, because I think equally as important is the music side of this thing. And just to give you a quick heads up, like I started playing, I was in band in elementary, middle school, high school. I was a band geek, if you will, and I was so fortunate to have parents that, like, even though they weren't musicians, the idea and the art of music, they took us to concerts. Like we got exposed. I'm so lucky that my parents like raised us this way, because I had a love for music from a very young age. So I'm curious about when you got interested in music and the music side of your life.
Honestly, it's kind of the same deal. One thing that I think my parents did, well, not the one thing, but one of the things that I think my parents did very smartly in raising us is that they wanted to get as many creative outlets in front of us as possible, especially if those creative outlets weren't very expensive things to do, like they got, for a while as kids, like my brother and I, we were big into drawing. And so like, whether it was art tablets and colored pencils, and of course we had an interest in comics. And so, then you're trying to draw the stuff in comic books. Or then, when I was in third grade, I think that's when in our elementary school, they had the conversation about, do you want your kid to participate in band, and whatever. And I naturally gravitated towards percussionist. I was a percussionist to this day. Of course, as a kid, I'm like, I just want to bang the drum. Yes. But then at the time they were like, well, it's probably still best if your kid can read sheet music and everything. And if you play drums, you're not really going to know that. So maybe get him into piano lessons. And so starting in about third grade, I started taking piano lessons so that I could play percussion in band in fourth grade. So yeah, like I said, my parents were very good about that. They were very good about going, and my mom, she also played flute when she was in high school. And so she actually sold her flute to buy my first snare drum. And I still have that snare drum. It's in the basement somewhere. And so, again, if we could scrape together some money to, do something like that. And my brother was in band as well. And so, yeah, they, like I said, if that was something they wanted to try and expose us to any artist, see if there was anything creative that we might latch on to. And for a really long time, it was art and music both. When I got into high school, there were more and more music related things, waking up early for band practice or, yes. Football games, stuff like that. All of that sort of band stuff kind of took over, and art kind of took a back seat the more my interest in music developed.
Yeah, it's so funny how that passion can take over other things. As like yourself, as it became like in high school, it's tough not to do band full time. Like if that's just to let you know. So, I was playing baseball and soccer and some of the other sports, and they become less and less as you get more and more. It's almost inevitable.
That's that realization of growing up, the idea between all of the things that you're interested in doing, and then the fact that there's still only 24 hours in a day, and there's still only so much time to get stuff done. And TV sitcoms lie to us because in every episode it seems like all of the characters have all of the time in the world to get stuff done, and why aren't they at their day jobs? Yes. How can they all just sit around and have made me believe that when I grew up I was just gonna have all of this time to just do whatever I want. But
dude, for real, thank you, sitcoms, lying to us. So that leads the question, what are some of what kind of music were you listening to? What are some of those earlier influences on you as you're growing up?
Oh man, I think, and like I said, I think it was as early on, I wasn't thinking of the music so much as I was thinking of the world building. I've always been a fan of, and so like when you think about games like Super Metroid or the Mega Man or Mega Man X or the Castlevania franchise, Chrono Trigger, I still have a vivid memory of at the time that Chrono Trigger was out, my dad actually worked for a video rental store, and so that's how I ended up renting and playing a lot of games. Was that like basically I could go in, and if it was Friday night and the game hadn't been rented out by somebody else, I could go pick out a game. And I still remember like going in and like seeing the box art for Chrono Trigger on the shelf and being like, oh man, this game looks really cool, like I should check this out, like knowing nothing about it. But I think at one point we had Nintendo Power for a bit, had GamePro magazine for a bit, I think, however long the free subscription, however many months of it they would give you or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, those games, because I don't think I was really thinking about it as much like, oh, I love this game because I love this music, but I loved the world that the game puts you into, and then the music became a part of that. And so, yeah, I think I named all of course, Mario games. Oh, Zelda, of course.
It's interesting to hear you. Yeah. It's interesting to hear you mention the world building thing, because Chrono Trigger is a great example of Super Nintendo has some really, so does Nintendo, but Super Nintendo just does some really amazing things considering the limitations of what you had. Chrono Trigger is one of them. I think of Super Metroid. All these games where they have they're oozing with atmosphere, and they're still, in my opinion, so effective today. Even this is 20 and 30 years now after some of these games have arrived.
Yeah. I think that's why we see indie studios that still make pixel art games, is because it has that timeless look to it, where I think pixel art will always, if done right, will always look aesthetically pleasing to us. Whereas, you have some of those early like Nintendo 64 games or those early PlayStation games, where like, for as fun as they might have been, they don't really hold up to the test of time. And so, but that pixel art style, it's sort of seeped into our bones at this point. We accept the look of it, we like the look of it. And so, yeah, those Super Nintendo games, what they could do with, 16 bits in a dream.
So before we get into the Mario Maker stuff, had you done, and obviously you're a musician, but then had you done any compositional type stuff? Had you done any sort of music creation before Mario Maker comes on the scene?
Brother and I were both musicians. I would say I was more the like learned one. I went to school for it. I went to college for it. He
Nice.
was more the not really as much. I don't want to say like school trained or class,
Academic, whatever it's called.
But he was. I don't want to make a Lennon and McCartney reference here because like that is way overstating. But you know how Lennon he just sort of would stumble upon something that was great, and then McCartney is like, oh, let me explain to you why that thing that you just came up with is so cool and why it works so well. And that was kind of the dynamic that we had where he, any teenagers, fresh out of high school, thinking that we're going to, take over the world with music, spent time in our 20s, with various projects that, had at some point a failure to launch or whatever. But yes, I've always been interested in writing orchestral music and cinematic music ever since I would say middle to tail end of high school, like when that concept of watching a movie and like listening to a film soundtrack and noticing how I was getting, how I was eliciting an emotional reaction from me. Like, these are just like black notes on white paper. This is just, how is this music, this thing, how is this able to connect with me? How is this able to give me goosebumps, to impact me, make me feel sad or happy? And that idea of being able to use music to affect the emotions of people that, I'd never spoken a word to, never come in contact with, that ability to communicate with somebody without communicating, that idea of like the orchestral music and the cinematic music, like that has always been something that I've loved, high school into my 20s and everything. But honestly, like Twitch and Mario Maker and the stuff that's happened in these last, 4 or 5 years has really been the thing that's sort of taken that idea from, dream of a kid in his 20s to, something that may feasibly work, as a career option for me. And so, I had done some stuff, of course, spent time, working on my computer, writing things, but nothing that ultimately really went anywhere of any fruition that we would have really appreciated. And so, no, there's no dynamic, interesting backstory of, what was all the music stuff that you were doing, before Twitch, before we knew you as a composer. Mostly it's just, one failed to launch experiment after another, like, no, this is how we're going to take over the world with music. No, wait, that's a terrible idea. We're going to do it this way now. Like, yeah, there was plenty of that. But
well, you mentioned do music in college, and I took I think two or three performance classes before. My brother is a music major, and he's graduated now. He's been a band director for a long time, but like the music major is brutal in college because there's like so many like 1 and 2 unit classes like to even pursue the music major. That's interesting that you did that. I mean, did you end up doing it in composition, or if you don't mind me asking, what was like your background in college?
No, yeah. Sort of similar experience in college, and that if you wanted to be a music major, like none of the classes that you were required to take to be a music major satisfied any of your gen eds, right? And so like, like you're a business major or you're an English major or whatever else, like there's a lot of overlap between, your, but like nothing, it's like, oh, I'm taking a music history class, so that counts as a history credit, right? No, and so, yeah, college for me, was 100%, stuffing, taking more credits in a semester than I should because I'm trying to take all of the music classes that I want to take while also satisfying the gen eds. which was sad to me because I felt like there were other classes that would have interested in me outside of music. But to take those classes, you had to take the entry level class first. And once I took the entry level class, it satisfied the gen ed. And so did I really want to eat up 3 more credits or whatever,
Absolutely.
So that was the kind of game. The college I went to because it was a college that was my city. But when I was in high school, the director of bands in my high school was like, look, I don't have anything else that I can teach you. You have sort of excelled as a percussionist because I played 4-mallet percussion. Marimba was sort of my specialty. And he was like, I don't have anything else that I can really teach you. We need to bring somebody else in to help you. And so I actually met with the director of bands at that school. We became close friends. He was a mentor of mine. And it was just sort of one of those things where I was getting to my senior year and he's like, hey, if I threw you a little bit of scholarship money, would you consider coming to my school? And I'm like, well, I've made really no considerations up until this point. So yeah, that sounds like a great plan. And so like, it's not like I was like, oh, I know 100% this is the school that I'm going to, this is the reason. Like I had sort of, neglected to pay attention to the fact that I should be figuring out where I'm going to college. And so I was really happy that all that worked out. But it ended up being more of a degree in performance. They didn't really have a degree in composition there. I had taken some composition classes, but I had some kind of friction with the person who taught composition there because I have and will forever be in love with the leitmotif, in love with writing thematic music. You think of, John Williams or, video game composers like, Nobuo Uematsu, or people that like excel at taking a little fragment of an idea, reworking it, I love that premise because I think that feeds into that emotional tie. The reason that we love the Force theme is because of the associations we have with that music when we see it on screen. There's powerful imagery. If you as the audience don't understand music, but you understand the scene, you understand the world, you understand the story that the writer's trying to tell, then that gives that music context for you. It gives it additional emotional weight. And so I've always loved writing in that style. And my composition director was more like, no, try experimenting with 12 tone, try experimenting with octatonic stuff. And I'm like, I don't want to write that kind of music. Like, I get that you dig it, but that's like, and there are ways in which, you can incorporate those ideas into, more traditional Western harmonies and stuff. But yeah, like what ended up happening to me in college was I spent a lot of time practicing music, right? Because like I'm playing marimba, I have to give recitals. I'm sinking hours and hours of my day into trying to take somebody else's piece of music and make it perfect, so that I could perform it.
Yeah, totally.
And then I suddenly had this realization one morning where I was like, I would rather, if given the choice, I would rather spend that time making my own music as perfect as I want it to be, to then have played with. But like, I thought, being the kind of goofy desire for periodic desire for attention. I was like, I want to be that guy on stage, like with my front to the audience playing for everybody, Then I had that kind of sea change in college where suddenly I was like, oh, like I want to be the guy with my back to the audience conducting the piece of music that somebody else is playing, that like, that the desire that I sort of realized where that career path was going. Like if I kept on his performance, I'm like, this is just going to be my life day in and day out. Somebody else is going to write a piece of music and I'm going to sit there and grind away, trying to bring as much music out of their piece and make it sound but like, that's not what I want to do. Like, I'd rather spend that time creating my own music so that I can create those emotional reactions in others, like I would rather create the product than play the product, as it were.
No, and I think that also highlights that's how you express yourself. Like that's one of the things about music is there are many different avenues in the music, idiom to express yourself. But this is really interesting. That's kind of, and I think that's one of the things that college can do. You find what is your path for you. That's pretty cool.
Right.
Okay, so I think I started watching Twitch around 2014, probably. I mean, I came in through the Games Done Quick and all that stuff. But just shortly after that, I think I was looking because I couldn't remember exactly when Mario Maker was released, but it was around 2015. I at the time I didn't have a Wii U, so I wasn't able to play the games. But it almost was like finding Games Done Quick when I found people playing Mario Maker. And early on at the time, the first people I started watching were Pooh and Dragon Feeney and all these people, and it was just my mind was kind of blown with some of the stuff that you could do in Mario Maker. What's your path, and how do you bump in or how do you get to Mario Maker?
Oh, sure. Yeah, no, great question. I had a Wii for a really long time because, of course, once you become an adult and you have a little bit of money, you're like, okay, now I'm going to go buy all those game systems that I couldn't have as a kid, and now I can spend my Saturdays, playing any Nintendo 64 game I want, yes.
Totally.
And so I had a Wii. Then the Wii broke. Around the time that my Wii broke, I like so many others on YouTube, I actually stumbled across. It was actually first Carl Sagan videos, and I saw him playing Mario Maker, and I'm like, "What? There's a game where you can make your own Mario Maker levels?" And I don't even know what I had been watching on YouTube that caused YouTube to feed me, a Carl Sagan video. Yeah, I don't know what in the algorithm, like how I stumbled upon a Carl Sagan video. Yeah. But I watched some Carl Sagan videos. I think at the time, he was still only streaming once a week, and so he didn't have a ton of videos up. So then after, I had felt like I kind of gotten caught up on the Carl's videos. I was like, oh, Carl keeps mentioning this Pooh guy. Who's this Pooh guy? And then, I find Grand Pooh Bear's channel, and I'm like, and Pooh's putting out content like every day because Pooh's streaming every day. And I'm like, oh man, look, I have all these additional YouTube videos to watch. And so, I was watching a video of Pooh where, at that point, his love of Africa and everything had been known. I mean, Africa is tangential to like several other further points that we'll discuss later. It's crazy how much a Toto song has impacted my life, but, there was a video of Pooh playing a music level, an African music level, and I think it was maybe one of the first YouTube videos I'd seen where I'm like, whoa, you can make a music level in Mario Maker too? Like, that's crazy, because I did have Mario Paint. Again, speaking to, my parents' desire to emulate our creativity, like that was one of the games that like they felt like, oh, well, this isn't a game. This is more of like a creative, infotainment sort of thing. And so we had Mario Paint, and I immediately recognized that like, oh, this is like music editor in Mario Paint, but like in Mario Maker, that's really cool. And so Pooh was playing the music level, and I'm like, okay, that's it. I think that was the point where I was like, okay, now I have to get a Wii U. Now I have to get Mario Maker, because like I very pompously thought like, oh man, if I could do this, I bet I could make like really dope music levels. Like I was like, I know how the mechanics of the thing work. If I, could get in there and make it, like I just immediately became curious, like how robust, how full of music could I make a Mario Maker level, sort of issue that challenge to myself. And so, yeah, I bought the Wii U. And then I realized, through watching YouTube videos that, Twitch, that like if I wanted to actually stand a chance of getting a level played or something, that I needed to, get a Twitch account. And then it became about, I had no idea what to do to get my level played. I tried to join Discords, but I felt like every Discord that I joined that like was already this niche community of people. And I was like the odd guy going, hi guys, would you play my level? That'd be great. Thanks. And so, going to Twitch, and I realized that like people like you and Carl were at the time for me, like the mountaintop, right? I'm like, these people have, several thousand people in their chat at once. I have no inroads to this community. I have, like my only chance of getting them to play my level. I'm sorry. Sorry for misspeaking. Play my level. The only chance I had for that was word of mouth, was like a grassroots campaign. Like I needed to get somebody else to play my levels. And then maybe if people played my levels and they thought that they were good, then, word would spread, and like, maybe somebody else would recommend my level to those people. And so I 100% threw out bait. When I was watching Twitch, people like at the time, High Five to Safety, now Slade, and like Barbarous King. they were doing like viewer levels like every day. Like Barb was doing like 5,000 viewer levels, 6,000 viewer levels or something. And at the time he was keeping tallies of how many viewer levels he was doing. And so I found those daytime streamers were doing viewer levels, and I immediately was like, okay, my best chance of getting them to play my level is if I make music that they would want to hear in a music level. And so like Barb had made a joke one day about Tarzan Boy, that song by Baltimore, which now more people know of because of a Grand Prix World 1 and 2. And I was like, oh my goodness, Tarzan Boy works perfectly in Mario Maker. It's the right tempo for the Cheetah auto scroll. And so I'm gonna make a Tarzan Boy level for Barb. And if I just go into his chat every day and I just submit the level every day for viewer levels, there's a chance that it will be randomly picked. Because I was like, that's as good a shot as any, you know. And so at that point, I had made a pretty terrible Africa music level as far as like the music was still decent, but like I am in no way a level designer when it comes to like creating platforming or understanding what is blind. And the fact that people have nice things to say about the platforming in my level, I still consider a blessing to this day. Like I think I've gotten better at it, but like I didn't start Mario Maker to make really awesome platform. I wanted to make music in Mario Maker, you know, like everything else was just like secondary. It was basically like I saw music levels where they had used up all of their budget, the music, and so like it was just like Mario running through a spike maze. And I'm like, can I do something more than that? So anyways, sorry, tangential there.
Sure, no
so yeah, I patiently waited in Barb's chat until the day when you know, my level finally got picked. And like of course Barb's big DK fan, and Mario Maker 1 you had the costumes, and so like I did whatever what needed to be done, beat however many normal or expert levels to get the DK costume. So I made Tarzan Boy with the DK costume, and like, you know, Barb played it and he was like, oh man, like I really feel like somebody made this level just for me. And I'm like, you're dang right I did. Of course I did. You played it. Gotcha. And at the time that he played the level, Kiavik, who is the guy behind the YMM, the 1 year Mario Maker, 2 year Mario, he happened to be in chat, and like he pinged me on Discord and he's like, yo man, that was really good. I mean, your platforming was crap. And I'm like, that's fair point. And he's like, you know, you should join our Discord. We have that was at the point that because 1 year Mario Maker had already come and passed. Like, so I got Mario Maker, I think maybe spring of the year. So like a year and a half, maybe after Mario Maker had come out, you know? And he's like, we're doing a thing for 2 year Mario Maker. You should come in, join the Discord. And that's where I met, I was introduced to people like Bossman, and Ren, and some of the other people who were making early music levels in Mario Maker. Bossman made a 1 year Mario Maker level that was great, big influence. Like I felt like early on I learned a lot of my early contraptions and things like that playing Bossman levels. So yeah, Kiavik kind of brought me into the fold, and we took those original levels that I had made, like my original Africa level, and like Kiavik and Bossman and them kind of helped me retool the levels and helped me with platforming and play tested it more. And of course, that was Mario Maker 1 when you could download a level and open it in the editor, and you know, things like that.
The good old days.
Right, the good old days, right? Oh. And so, yeah, and then Kiavik was like, hey, you know what music I really want in Mario Maker? I want Push It to the Limit. I don't know, he's a big Scarface fan or whatever it is, I'm not sure. And at the time, I'm like, people are playing my levels now, and like, of course, like, you want to push, I'll make you a Push It to the Limit level. We'll make that happen. And I think to this day, it was my most popular, most played, most whatever, you know, of all of my Mario Maker 1 levels. But it also got the most thoroughly play tested because, you know, I had just come into that group. People were willing to play my level, give me feedback and everything. And so, yeah, so that's kind of how I went from just submitting levels to, you know, I submitted some early levels to High Five. They did not go well because they were very poorly made. But like High Five played a level or two of mine. But then Barb. But then, like I said, from there, once I had my foot in the door, then suddenly I got that Africa level remade and word spread. And then suddenly somebody's telling Pooh, "Oh my goodness, Pooh, there is this new Africa music level that you have to play." And Pooh's like, "I've played like 6 Africa music levels. Like what, like what could this Africa music level be that's any different?" And then, once that happened, once Pooh played my levels, said very nice things. The videos are still out there on YouTube of his, reaction to the Africa music level. So then, of course, that data filtered to Carl. Carl started playing my levels. I still remember I was over at a friend's house having dinner with friends one night, and I saw a ping in Discord that's like, "Carl's playing your levels right now." And I'm like, "Oh, crap, guys. I'm sorry. We got to go turn Twitch on right now because Carl's playing." And all the time, like, he's like playing my levels for the very first time. And I'm like, "I'm sorry, guys. I got to just give me a second. Like, I know we're getting ready to eat and everything, but like, he's going to go play Hakuna Matata. So like, I got to, I got to go check that out." And so, yeah, those were the earlier, going from like nobody knowing me to, got my level played at the right time, got the right people interested in what I was doing, and got very fortunate.
So I think there's a couple things there. One, I think the thing about level design and level creation is you're creating a level for people to play. So I think that's one of the great things about seeing people you like watching and stuff like that, see them play your level, because this is the whole reason you're doing this. So that it's this whole communal thing. That's one of the things I think I love about Mario Maker. I know it sometimes can be challenging for some people because there are so many people playing them and so many people submitting them. So trying to get discovered is always going to be a challenge when it comes to this stuff. In that vein, I have a question for you, because my memory is a little bit hazy, but I don't remember watching very many people streaming their level design and their level creation. So you mentioned that you found help once you found the community and people had kind of taken you in and you started being able to communicate. Were there people streaming level design? Or like how do you even go about knowing how to do some of this?
No, I mean, I didn't start streaming until well after the stuff that we'll talk about later. Like I went several years of making levels, and I think Barb did level design. Occasionally, Pooh would make a level for Carl, or Carl would make a level for Pooh. But no, I don't think, at the time, I think the early days of Mario Maker, it was mostly streamers, 100-man challenge, or, playing or doing viewer levels. And so, yeah, like I said, that's why I was fortunate. A lot of like the people in the 1 year Mario Maker community, whether I was like, Kiabik, Pink Birdo, Boss Man, of those, the old guard, right. As it were, that were willing to, download the level and be like, this part is blind, this part I have no idea how to make this jump. You need to make the, and sort of being receptive to that feedback. So it was 100% the Discord community, those people being willing to download a level and then have me make changes and upload it again a couple of days later, and they play test that, and a lot of that cooperative back and forth.
I kind of like, maybe it's possible maybe I watched Panga create a level a little bit, but that might have been a little later. Like my mind's kind of with the years sometimes now, fogged together.
I'm sure. Like at the time, I didn't know Panga as much. He streamed. I watched mostly daytime streamers at the time when I was on Twitch. But
he was late.
Like Panga, I think maybe Fail stream. Maybe did some level creation. So yeah, I'm sure there were some people out there, but my knowledge of those people was limited at that time.
So if you don't mind me, so can you take us through the process a little bit? Because I've watched many of your streams now and how you design and how you do the music and all that kind of stuff. But how does it work when you design a level that has music in it? Do you start with the music? Like what is it? Can you take us through the process a little bit?
Yeah, sure. The biggest enemy of the music level creator is your budget. That was sort of the earliest hurdle that I found myself trying to overcome, because you get a limited number of sprites and a limited number of power-ups, and those are the two things you can use to make the music, and they're also the things you use to make the platforming. And so realizing, okay, I only have 100 enemies, I only have 100 power-ups, I want to make more music and that budget will allow for, and I want to also have platforming in the level. And so how do we solve that problem? And that became, the idea of creating contraptions or gimmicks, ways to either get an enemy to play more than one note, or creating percussion setups. And that's something that I saw from Boss Man early on in one of his levels. a setup to get a POW block repeatedly bounce on a note block in time, because POW block is bass drum, P switch is snare drum. So getting like some basic percussion setups going, or finding ways to, I need this mushroom to play this note block, but then I could have that mushroom travel X distance and hit another note block. And can I get that mushroom to travel in time? Or could I have that mushroom hit another note block that's not playing a note, that's just like a regular white note block, and have that note block spawn an enemy? Because that was a realization, was that you have 100 whites and 100 power-ups, you can also have 100 items, and that actually might be more than that, in like question blocks or note blocks.
Right.
And the idea of realizing like, okay, I either need to take the sprites that are making the music and somehow find a way to also use them for the platforming. Like maybe a Koopa hits a note block and on a row of spikes, and now Mario has to bounce off the spike. Right. I've now used that Koopa for a music element and a platforming element. Or can they spawn other enemies out of note blocks? And you watch some of my later Mario Maker 1 levels, you'll see that that's happening all over the place, is that music is playing as it spawns in, but then those items are triggering other things that are spawning items for platforming. And so that was really the big hurdle. And that's where I kind of treated Mario Maker level design sort of as like my Sudoku, my sort of problem solving free time thing, because it became fun to realize like, okay, this is what I want to do, and these are the obstacles in my way. And so what can I do? What can I do with my limited resources? And that really became, I'm sorry, just one second.
Yeah, no problem.
That became my sort of central focus, was like, how can I do more with less? Like this is what I have available to me. And so, yeah, music always came first, because when it came to the music, you can't really change where the music goes. Like for those that don't, the music is basically just like a chromatic scale, starting on the lowest tile, going up to the highest tile. And so if I needed a note to be a C, it had to be in the space where it needed to be. If I needed a note to be a G, it has to be where the G space is. And so, I always did music first, because the music would also burn through your budget. And so, I would find myself, okay, I have all of the music for this subworld done, but I've used up 95% of my resources and 75% of my available space. So now the question becomes, how can I carve out platforming around that? And so it was always the music first, always the interest of getting the best quality the best quality musical result, because I was always like, the music has to be great. If the platforming is just okay, so be it. But like, going with composer here, music has to be top notch, right? Everything else is secondary. And so, yeah, so that was my sort of methodology, was I need to find music that fits the parameters, because you have a Cheetah auto scroll level, or you either you keep your tempo consistent, you either need to have Mario running at top speed the whole time so that he can't slow down, because that drives your tempo, or you set an auto scroller. Sort of realizing, what music can I make that is the correct tempo for Mario Run, or what music can I make is the correct tempo for a Cheetah auto scroll, sort of things. And then from there go about all the music laid out, and then going, okay, what can I do with the space that's left?
That's and I was curious if you take into account, because one of the things, as I am in the camp that maybe because I saw your levels later on after they had been worked on a little bit, but I thought the platforming was pretty decent, and I feel like the platforming fits with what's going on musically, and I don't know if there was that a conscious choice, or is that just like serendipitous? Like, how does that work with that?
It's a little bit of half and half. I mean, there were times where, so like with the Mario Run level, since Mario is one that's setting the tempo because he's what's causing the screen to scroll and therefore the enemies to spawn and everything, it's much easier in a Mario Run level to sync Mario's actions with the music, because if I have him jump at a certain point, I can have him jump on the downbeat of something, if the music allowed for it, gave me the space to do sorts of things like that. So there were some times like that where, the level where things would work out, but when it comes to like a Cheeto auto scroll level, you have to allow for some player agency. Like they're not going to move at the exact same speed that I might have through the level. And so there were times where like, okay, well, if the player starts out running right when the level starts, and if I could like make all of the jumps in the level full jumps and like force a full jump, then maybe there are ways that I can force the player to do this action at this point that lines up with the music. But at best, there were plenty of happy accidents when it came to that. Like there were times where I did try, maybe there was a really big downbeat, a really big moment in the music that I would try to get to line up. But then there were other times where I was just trying to make any platforming work. And then I went to go play it back. I'm like, oh my goodness, that's actually really close with, lining up with the music. If I shift this back one or forward one, so yeah, like I said, I'd love to be able to take credit and be like, yep, totally planned for all of that 100%. But like, there were a lot of happy accidents that made some of those things line up.
That's awesome. I'm glad to hear that there is some RNG with that, if you will.
Right? Yeah. Oh, yeah. For sure. That's RNG for sure. Yeah.
So before we get into the ROM hacking stuff, how does that? I mean, this Mario Maker 2 comes out. Does that completely change the game? How does that impact or influence the compositional stuff you're already doing?
Mario Maker 1 changed a lot of things. Initially, it looked like mostly for the worst, but then it just created a breeding ground for new creativity. And so, like in Mario Maker 1, you could take a sprite like a Koopa and a power-up like a mushroom or a fire flower, and you could stack them on the same square. They could be overlapping in the editor, which meant that you could have both of those sounds play the music block, right? They took that away in Mario Maker 2. So that the items can't overlap. There were some initial contraptions, like percussion contraptions, that we had created in Mario Maker 2 that didn't work. There were ways that we used actually thwomps and podobos to create an offset enemy where you could take an enemy and like glitch it. You know how like you take a 2-tile enemy, you stack a 1-tile enemy on top of it, it offsets it. Well, there was a way that you could do that and then replace the thwomp with a podobo, and it would keep that enemy offset at half a tile. And because the enemy's offset half a tile, he spawns half a tile earlier and plays a note. And so we were like, even in Mario Maker 1, we were finding ways to sort of subdivide the grid to get additional options that we didn't think were available. We found that if you took a semi-solid platform and had the top of the semi-solid platform with the note block there underneath it, that the semi-solid platform would cause the enemy to hit the note block half a tile sooner and cheat auto scroll. And so like we had found these interesting ways to sort of towards the tail end of Mario Maker's life cycle to kind of further subdivide the grid and give us more options. And then like a lot of those things broke. And it's like Nintendo realized that they were glitches. And then like there were several things that stuck around, but it basically required a lot of the music creators to find alternatives to those setups that we had before. And there were a lot of people in the early days, not me, that can't, like people like Cardboard Box and Jim Zan and Ren that we spoke of, that like Cardboard Box, I think came to me and came to my Discord. He found a way to use slopes to create new looped percussion setups. So there was a lot of sharing in the community because at the point that Mario Maker 2 came out, there were already accomplished level creators that were trying to, see what they could do next, right? And then there was a guy named Mind Wanderer who did some early tests with parachutes where he was like, if we could figure out how long it takes an enemy on a parachute to fall to land on a note block, and we can sync that up with the music, we found out, okay, I need this note to play right here, but this note is in the way. Well, if I move it back 6 tiles and I move the enemy up 1 and put him on a parachute, that enemy will now play at the exact same time it would have played if it was in its original position. And then there have since been other people in my Discord, Charisse, who else have I not mentioned, where there's a guy, H267 is how he's known in my Discord, but he's created Mario Maestro. He's trying to create like a website app where you can go download a MIDI file and it will show you on like the Mario Maker grid where you need to put the notes. And then he's even trying to program that to account for like some of the tricks that we have with like parachute offsets and things like that. And so it's been a big community thing. A lot of the, there's been some tech stuff some setups and contraptions for Mario Maker 2 that I figured out. And I love to like play another another creator's level and see that contraption. I'm like, I know where you got that setup from. I recognize that setup. But it's the same on the other end as well. Like I said, there were people that were doing research that were discovering the tech. Does this need a steep slope or a gentle slope? And then like there was people that liked Mario Maker, liked music levels, but then also enjoyed scratching that itch of, is there another way we can set this up? Can we offset an enemy? What does a steep slope do here? What does a gentle slope do here? How does that affect how high or low an item bounces off a note block? And so it was much more community involvement, much more people interested, sharing ideas, not being withholding about the things they found out. They found a way to make something work, and they're like, let's tell everybody. And so I've even within my Discord, there's in stream there are links, command links, where you can go to a Google Doc and see how how a lot of my contraptions work and how to set them up yourself. People that have shared techniques for track-based loops in my Discord. And so it's really been about how can we get that information out to the people so other people can use it. And like I said, I was fortunate to have people share their insights with me and move forward with it.
And, I think that says so much about the community that's obviously involved in, and that's probably why people are so passionate about this stuff, because you freely share this stuff. And I think that's awesome. I think it's also interesting, when I have friends who are musicians and make their living doing it. And when you go to compose at a computer, you can, at this point, that you play something on your keyboard and it'll show up as manuscript on the computer at this point. Right. With Mario Maker, you got to become an engineer. Apparently, you got to go through all this creation and stuff just to find the tricks that'll work for what's up here, artistically speaking.
It's like I said, sometimes creatively it's fun to be put in a box because, there's nothing more terrifying than a blank canvas, but you deal with something like Mario Maker where, this is what my budget is. This is what my list of available notes are, like you realize the sandbox that you're playing in and you're going, okay, I want to try and do as much within that sandbox as possible. And so, when you find out, oh, look, I can move this enemy back 11 tiles from its original position, move it up 2 tiles, put a parachute on it, and now this note plays exactly in time as if it were here. And so now I have this collection of notes that's like really in the way of the platforming. Right. I can just shift it all back, get it all out of the way, and it's still there, it still plays. And so that's sort of, I think, where the fun for some of those people comes in, where it's like you're finding Easter eggs inside the game. You're finding clever ways around problems. It's a fun type of problem solving. There's that endorphin rush when you find out that everything lines up and it still works and everything. Yeah. And then that ability to share it with others and that ability to also help it make your own levels better. And so, like I said, it's that really fun kind of problem solving that I think that community of people, enjoys doing. How can we work within these limitations to make the best product?
I think that's super fascinating, interesting, and that's the process, because it when you play it on, when you actually play through the level, it's so seamless. And I obviously, because all of us who play Mario Maker stuff, we know how much like time and effort it went into creating something like that. But that just gives me another layer of appreciation, because that's just incredible. You have to go through all that just to get to a final level created. One level done, figured out all that tech.
Yeah, it's I contend that like it's. To making a music level in Mario Maker is challenging. Making a music level that also has dynamic, fun platforming, or I'm sorry, making music level hard. Making just a regular Mario Maker level with fun, challenging platforming that is fair and blind friendly and intuitive is very difficult. Combining those two things together and ensuring that there's no, jank or, that's a very difficult trifecta to achieve. And, it's one of those, if you did everything right, people won't think you've done anything at all, you go through all of this effort and the hope is that you create a product that's seamless, but at the same time, people that are enjoying the music just sort of expect the music to be great now, and they're not realizing that like oh, I spent like 30 hours making this work, like this was a lot of maneuvering, reshuffling, there are times where I spent, as much as an hour or two just trying to find a spot for like a note or two to play, where I'm like, this note has to play and this note has to play, but they are 100% in the way. What can I do? Can I put this item on a conveyor? Can I offset it with a parachute? What can I do to solve this problem? Yeah, but in the hope that, the finished result is seamless,
Well, I can vouch for it. It certainly is. So, real quick comment. Cerise is in the chat and says, like your problem solving of the Super Mario Brothers 2 mushrooms for your 4-year Mario Maker level. I'm not 100% sure what that's referring to, but is there new tech with the SMB2 mushroom?
Yeah. I mean, I don't exactly know what I think I know what he's referring to, but basically, I'm trying not to get too nerd about this because I don't we're on a time budget, but I don't know if we are or not. I mean, I could talk about myself all day, but so if we stop for a minute and we think that most of us know what like common time is, or 4/4 time, boom chick, like what 90% of all music is written in, right? 2 and 4 on the snare, 1 and 3 on the bass, right? Yeah. Also, you have a cheetah auto scroll level where you assume that every tile is like a 16th note, right? So 4 tiles is 1 beat, right? 1 eanda, 2 eanda, right? Is sort of your most basic breakdown, right? Then that's very limiting, because if you assume that every 4 tiles is 1 beat, that only gives you 1 tempo option. That means all of the music you put in Mario Maker has to be 110 beats per minute. We started trying to find other ways with offsets to essentially give us different tempo options with the same auto scroller speed. And so if you assume that 3 tiles is 1 beat, then you have a different tempo, because there's one, and so you have a tempo of about 146, somewhere around there, beats per minute. If you assume 3 tiles to a beat, well, 3 tiles to a beat is a swing rhythm, right? Triple it, right. Like a waltz time, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Well, what if I want to make something that's in 4/4 time? What if I want to take those 3 tiles and evenly space 4 notes across them? Is that something that's possible? We found a way through offsets to take those 3 tiles and split the second of the 3 tiles to make it sound like an even 8th note, 1 and. Oh, so for anybody, like I'm playing 3 notes in this hand, 2 notes in this hand, but spaced evenly. So how can we further split the beat? Bossman made a level, a Toho Tao. I don't know that game. UN Owen was her. Whatever. He made a level in Mario Maker 2 where he found a way through parachutes to get us basically the last note in the set that we needed to get like an even subdivision of 4 notes across 3 tiles. And so like the 4-year Mario Maker level was use that technique. We call it like a 4/3, where we are, again, seamless to the player. They're not realizing that it's still a cheetah auto scroll level, but the tempo is actually faster than cheetah auto scroll is. And that's because we found these other ways to subdivide the beat that use parachutes, or sometimes you just put a mushroom on a conveyor and hope that it travels the right distance to land on the music note exactly in time. But that's even evolved to, Charisse helped us figure out some other techniques, like my Final Fantasy VII level uses a technique which is like 2.5 tiles to a beat. And so like we're dropping enemies from random distances that happen to line up. And so we're doing all of these things to take the grid and subdivide it more so into half a grid or quarter grid spaces, to give, we now, I think we can get like 5 or 6 different implied tempo with the same auto scroller speed. So, the camera's moving at one speed, but the music all sounds like it's playing at different speeds.
I'm glad, thank you for going down that road, because I was curious how you change tempo, or how you can control, because there are, at least to my ears, there are definitely different tempos in some of the levels I've watched. And so I was curious how that happens. So it's actually really fascinating that's some of the, you've discovered some tech to do it.
Yeah, you like I said, the semi-solid trick that I talked about before in a cheat auto scroll, you put a semi-solid behind a note block for whatever reason, because Nintendo, it plays half a tile sooner than it normally would. So, you take 3 tiles and then you put a note block on the first tile and a note block on the third tile, but that third note block has the semi-solid under it. Now that note plays half a tile earlier, and now it's splitting the difference of that second tile, and we've essentially subdivided 2 over 3. And then from there, you're just extrapolating that. Can we play 4 notes evenly across 5 tiles? Can we play 4 notes evenly across 7 tiles? Like, how else can we find a way? Because that's really what it boils down to is the camera speed is the same, but if you consider a beat every 2 blocks is different than tempo every 3 blocks, 4 blocks, 5 blocks, and more ways that we can find to evenly space those notes with parachute offsets, with platforms, with semi-solids, all sorts of things. And it creates a seamless transit where the player doesn't even realize, oh, wait, this tempo is drastically different than the last Cheetah Auto Scroll music level I played. And most people don't even stop to question how that was possible. They're just like, because composer,
Right.
But yeah, there's a lot of braining that goes into that. And a lot of people like Charisse, like Cardboard Box, like Boss Man. Owl Puzzle is another one that she started making levels in Mario Maker 2 and hadn't really done it in Mario Maker 1. And I'm still terrible at track-based music levels, but there are people that do the track stuff that is still just like completely foreign to me. Like, I hope to want to learn it one day, but
I've noticed that the ROM hacking community really started. There was always one, but it seemed like it grew during the whole Mario Maker period in general, both Mario Maker 1 and 2. And so I'm curious how you end up going from, H267 is here as well. That's awesome. How do you go from Mario Maker creation, music, composition, all that kind of stuff into the ROM hacking world and creating music for that?
I think, and there have been several streamers that have touched on this better than I have that were a part of the community before me. I think one informs the other. You had people that were making ROM hacks. I think to a degree, Mario Maker was a response from Nintendo to ROM hacks that brought in a lot of people and gave them the option to do level creation where Lunar Magic might have been too dense for them. But then that experience from Mario Maker, once they sort of meet that limitation cap, go, okay, well, what can we do? Maybe now's the time that I get into Lunar Magic. Maybe now's the time that we figure that out. Excuse me. Oh, my goodness. I'm sorry about that. And so, I think and there's been a natural kind of ebb and flow in the Mario community where Mario Maker comes out, it's exciting. Then as some interest in Mario Maker kind of wanes, people kind of get interested in the SMW hacks again. Then all of a sudden there's a flood of SMW hacks, great hacks to come out. Then Mario Maker 2 comes out. Interest in, SMW kind of wanes again back into Mario Maker. It's kind of like this ebb and flow between the two.
Sure.
And so for me, what had happened was, it was all Barb. It was all Grand Poo World. I was still, only originally known in the Mario Maker community as a music level creator. And Barb had kind of gone into that flow of, all right, I'm kind of losing interest in Mario Maker. I want to make a ROM hack. Pooh had kind of bullied Barb into making and said, if anybody was ever going to name a ROM hack, make a name a ROM hack after me, it'd have to be Barb. And, there's this great Pooh stories there about him, how he kind of strong-armed Barb into making a ROM hack for him. So he said, but like I said, that takes us all the way to Barb nearly has the very first Grand Poo World finish. And I think maybe he'd even been working on it before I had been watching him for too long. And he mentioned one day in chat, he's like, oh man, wouldn't it be great if I could put Africa in the credits for Grand Poo World? And there were several people clamoring in chat to be like, oh, Barb, people that probably actually knew how Lunar Magic worked, knew how music making in SMW worked. I had zero clue how music making in SMW worked. But I was like, no, look, Barb, I already made the Africa music level in Mario Maker. I already have all the components for it. Like, I can port it into SMW, easy peasy. You know, like, I talked this big game about like completely understanding how it worked and everything, up to the point that Barb was like, no, I want Composer to do it. All right, his name Composer. You go ahead and make Africa. And this at this point was like, I think we were like 2 weeks out.
Oh my God.
From him releasing Grand Poo World 1. And and so, yeah, I just lied through my teeth and said, yeah, I know how to do all of this. And then proceeded to jump onto SMW Central and like figure out how to make music in Super Mario World. And like I said, at the time, I knew nothing. I realizing that it was all text-based. And yeah, I spent like 2 weeks feverishly trying to learn as much as I could about SMW porting and like trying to get that first success going into Notepad and putting some data down and then running it through Add Music, which is the program that we use with Lunar Magic to make music, and just like being excited that like I finally got the SPC player to like play back notes and, you know, and that it actually worked. And so, yeah, from there, it was like a mad dash.
I watched some of your stream for composition for Grand Poo World 2, and at this point, it looks like you knew what you were doing. So the fact that that was your story for the other one is pretty funny.
I loved you know, Pooh's stream, the idea of being able to contribute to the hack. You know, I'd become a big fan of Barb's stream at the time too, and it was just like, yeah, the idea that's like, you know, all right, buddy, it's time to figure this out real quick because, you know, you made a lot of promises that you can't deliver on yet. And so yeah, I worked at that time. I wasn't even dealing with custom samples or anything. I was just dealing with all of the sounds that were native to Super Mario World. All of that stuff would come later. So made Africa. Barb played it on stream. He thought it was sick. And then we realized we have a problem here where in the credits for Super Mario World, the way that it works is you have, you know, after you defeat Bowser, you have Mario walking in front of Peach riding Yoshi, you know, like, right, you know, that section of credits. But then it goes to Yoshi's house, and then the eggs hatch, right? And then it goes to the final section of the credits, which is showing all of the enemies before the end. Right. Well, the way that that's structured out in Super Mario World is that's actually 3 different pieces of music. You have first section of music, and then you have a music cut into the Yoshi's house, and then you have another cut into the final credits. And so we realized we can't just have we can't just have Africa play the whole time, because built into the credits are these cuts. And that's when Hold On for One More Day by Wilson Phillips was a meme song in Pooh's stream as well. And Barb's like, we got to do Hold On. Can we do Hold On? And so we broke it out where you get like 1 minute and 30 seconds of Africa. And then the Yoshi's House segment, I cut to be intro to Hold On for One More Day. And then the enemy section was the rest of the song. And so we found a way to kind of stitch that together so that it went from one song into the second song. So we did that, and then realized that we needed a credits theme, and Tarzan Boy, of course, had become synonymous with Barb's channel. And so yeah, like I said, I completely presented a false narrative to Barb, told him I knew exactly what I was doing, and that it was going to be no problem for me. And then I spent several nights over the next 2 weeks, you know, being up very late, trying to figure it out, trying to get it all done. And it all came together, and, you know, it was kind of history from there. But yeah, you know, fake it till you make it. I you know, told a bunch of little white lies, and it all seemed to work out okay.
Dude, man, I gotta tell you, I think that's such an important lesson. Or if you know, you say fake it till you make it, but I think just saying yes to something, like if you're, you know, especially in art, it's a little bit, you know, we're kind of predispositioned for some of this creativity where like we just want to explore and try some new things. But it's such a true statement that you never know what you're gonna get until you say yes. So yes, maybe you didn't know what you were doing at the time, but what a great path of discovery you go down.
Well, that's the thing, is that like when it comes to really anything in life, especially, you know, taking risks or trying something new, like it should terrify you a little bit, because that's the unknown, and, you know, you're not going to know what's on the other side of it unless you're willing to, you know, take that first step cross that threshold and see what's waiting for you on the other side. And sometimes that means sinking a lot of time into something, having a little bit of mild panic about whether or not it's going to work out. But, that's how you make progress. That's how you develop. That's how you get better.
Now that you've spent some more time with these tools and stuff, what are some of like the challenges and limitations of composing music for, for Lunar Magic, for Super Mario World ROM hacks and things like that?
One of the things was learning how to start importing custom samples, because the thing is like the way that the chip tune, or not chip tune, but the sound font, the music of the Super Nintendo worked, is that whereas like NES was basically the sound card itself was playing like beeps and boops, it had like, which is but with Super Nintendo, what they were doing was they were actually making recordings of real synthesizers, like David Weiss or Koji Kondo or whoever it was making the music. They actually were like playing some synthesizer that they had IRL and recording it, and then you're taking that recording and you're smashing it down into a very small audio file. You're bit crushing that sound, and you are making it as small of a file as you can, because every SPC file, every audio file for a Super Nintendo game is about 64 kilobytes in size. It is, when you consider that like your average like MP3 is like 3 or 4 megabytes, that is very, very tiny. And so you have to figuring out how to get the sound that you want, compress it enough that it's still recognizable as what you wanted the sound to be. And then, it's sort of like Mario Maker, space budget is always the thing that you're battling against. How many different sounds can I get in here into this very small file size? And so from there, it's really just about learning the language. I want to make the sound pan from left to right. How do I do that? I want to make the volume go up and down over this time. I want to apply vibrato to this note. I want to apply echo, or, it just becomes a learning thing. Like, how do you do the next thing? How do you do the next thing? Right. And so there are still people out there much better at porting SMW music than I am. I'm standing on the shoulders of giants when it comes to those things. There are, Barb was just doing a stream the other day where he was playing a port that Dan Salvato had made on SMW Central that is fantastic. There are people like Louie and G Gamer and K Kevin and several other people that like you play any SMW like Kaizo hack, and you're going to see these names in the credits. Plenty of people that I learned from. I didn't come in and redefine the genre or anything. I'm still struggling to keep up. Yeah. And so it's just been again, fortunate that we're in such an inclusive community. People that are willing to share ideas, people that are willing to help you out when you don't understand why something's not working. Just the willingness to learn and to, beat your head against the desk for a little bit until you figure out, how it is to solve that problem. And so, like I said, and again, it's that joy of kind of working inside that box, realizing these are my limitations. I can only do this much with it. How much can I do with my limited option? How big can I make it?
I'm not Super Mario World. I have played through a few of the ROM hacks, but I struggle with some of the Kaizo stuff. I'm not as good as a player as some of the others. But one of the things that I just love about all of the different ROM hacks that are being created nowadays and have been for the last 5 or 10 years is the soundtracks have just kind of gone, as I like to say, bananas, because they are just they add so much to the game, and yet they are so like incredibly creative. They're just as creative as the stuff you're hearing in Mario Maker, and it's just a different kind of platform or different idiom, and it's awesome that there's so much creativity and work going into it, because it really adds quite a bit to the game, just like a normal soundtrack would,
Yeah, I think that ROM hacks are kind of that perfect mix to. It's like a shot of nostalgia, because
totally.
not only are you, you're giving the player a new Mario experience. And so in some ways, it's just like they're playing Super Mario World when they were a kid, but they're new levels, and they're levels that meet the challenge, their skill level, as an adult now. But then you can also throw in music that doesn't have to be from a Mario game. It can be music from Mega Man, music from Metroid. And so like you're injecting all of this nostalgia, right? You have custom backgrounds that are really backgrounds from other games that aren't Mario. And so like it's this combination of our 16-bit childhood,
Right.
And I think that's why, the jokes are made about, oh, you can't even make an SMW ROM hack these days unless the soundtrack's a banger, is because, we've been able to step away from this idea that, every level is the athletic theme,
right.
or, because there are more and more people contributing to the pot of, to the pool of things to draw from. And so, yeah, it's like this nostalgia overload where we're getting the best of all of our favorite things all in one video game package,
No, absolutely, and I think that's I as much as I'm just a viewer or a fan of the community, it definitely makes you feel like you're a part of it because there's all these different things happening and contributing, and it's a very communal place. I got to tell you, while I primarily speedrun, I got to say that the Mario community itself just feels like this very inclusive place that basically, if you have an idea, go ahead and there will be some people who might be interested and willing to help you out and kind of go explore some of those options. So it's pretty awesome.
We're super lucky. Our community, like I would put our community in a fist fight against any other community out there, and we wouldn't fist fight. We would invite them in. We would ask them if they would like a cookie or a beverage,
exactly.
maybe.
Yeah.
They're and for somebody like myself who felt very much growing up, I was on the fringe of social interaction and not really in the mix of things, like always feeling having that kind of outcast look on like, what is my place amongst the social circle, and everything. To have the level of inclusivity across, doesn't matter, who you are, where you come from, everybody is just willing to, bring you into the fold. Make sure you feel welcome. I've not been a part of a bunch of other gaming communities, but I would be hard pressed to say that there's a better one. Like I said, it's great to see. It's great to experience. It's great to be a part of. I certainly wouldn't be here if people weren't willing to do for me what now I try to do on Twitch for others. And so yeah, it's fantastic.
So I think it was this year, if I remember correctly, but you were partnered this year on Twitch. And first of all, it's awesome. Yeah, I know, right? I know, it's awesome. It's great to see somebody, that I think that's one of the great things about being a fan is like you're so excited when one of the streamers you really like watching gets partnered, stuff like that. What have you been doing with your stream nowadays? Like are you continuing to compose? If somebody was to come watch your day, what can we, I know you're playing some Dark Souls this week, so.
Yeah, well, I'm sort of in a when it rains it pours situation right now. The Mario Maker led into the ROM hack stuff. ROM hack Grand Prix World 2 is 100% responsible for the opportunities that I've gotten this year to actually start working on some video game stuff. And so like 2020 has just been a trying to keep my head above water sort of situation. When I was, there are very specific metrics for getting partnered on Twitch that impacted what I streamed, when I streamed, sure. Because, like that was the brass ring, right? Yes. Like I'm trying to get that partnership ring, right? And honestly, since getting partnered, the thing that has been nice is just the fact that I feel like I can stream what I want to stream when I feel like streaming it, that it gives me the variety to stream and do other things. And, maybe only 40 people showed up in this stream. Well, that's okay. I'm not trying desperately to maintain a 75 view count average so that I can get partnered, it's sort of allowed that flexibility to go. There was, I had always wanted to do Like some streams where I work on music on stream, whether that's SMW music, whether that's video game music, like cinematic orchestral music, stuff like that. So really, partnership has just given me that flexibility to feel like I'm not anchored into being, just a Mario Maker streamer. While I still feel like that's a big part of my existence on Twitch and a big part of my viewership, there's more of me creatively than just making, Super Mario Maker levels. And so to be able to share some of those other things, or to just be able to, have 4 hours in an evening where I can just play a game for fun and, because that's like the history of me on Twitch has always to some degree been about creating a product. I'm either making a Mario Maker level or I'm making music for a ROM hack. And so I've always kind of envied those streamers who could just boot up a game and just, play Dark Souls or just play 100-man. Like they didn't have to worry about, have I created a new level by the end of the stream? Or, like it was never product based. It was just like, I'm just going to go online and play video games for fun for a couple of hours, and like, at this point, with the way things are going for me, like time that I spend playing video games is the time that you see me on stream playing video games in a week. Like I'm not, casually burning through 8-hour campaigns of something on a Saturday afternoon, like I'm in that grind, I'm in that hustle right now. And so I'm, if I'm not streaming, I'm probably working on music or finally paying attention to some piece of adulting that I let last for too long, and so like it's just so it's nice with getting partnered to be able to be like, what, I'm just gonna play a game that I've never played before and just do a blind playthrough of something, and if you guys want to come hang out, that's great. If you guys just want to hang out for Mario Maker, that's cool. I'll have a Mario Maker stream coming up. I'm trying to, I feel like 2020 between Twitch stuff and between the other video game stuff that's happening for me this year, I'm really hoping that this is the tipping point where, I'm still working a 9-to-5 job. And so, I feel like I'm basically working 3 jobs right now because I have the 9-to-5 job. I have the soundtrack stuff, the video game soundtrack stuff that I'm doing. I have the Twitch streaming that is unrelated to that. And so, I'm sort of hoping this is the thing that gets me over that hump, can, allow me to, sustain myself fully on freelance music stuff, Twitch streaming stuff, which would, allow me to stream more often or at more regular hours and stuff. And right now it's just, trying to get things in when I can, trying to keep my head above water.
Thanks so much for actually talking about some of the, I guess we call it professional or business side a little bit more of Twitch, because I have noticed, especially, thankfully it's gotten better in the last couple of years, but we talked about, Pooh or Barb. Nowadays, when they decide to play something else, they'll mention, hey, I understand if this is going to be the end of your stream time with me. I totally understand. I think it's so important that we're conscious of some of that mental health toll that, streaming one thing all the time can take on you, because it is a grind from what I've seen. It seems like it's a grind for people to achieve that partner status. So the fact that you're honest about that, and we talk like we accept that and say, hey, this is going to be okay if you do something different. So I appreciate you sharing that. I think it's important.
Look, I mean, that's the thing. Like, streaming on Twitch is just like any other creative endeavor. Like, if you are starting a rock and roll band with your friends and your only objective is to achieve international stardom and like anything short of that is a failure in your book, then you are getting into it for all the wrong reasons, right? The only reason to do anything in this world is because you love doing it, and you should have no other expectation for yourself other than the fact that you love doing it. I still love making levels and the satisfaction that I get out of making levels. Like, yes, but I also love pizza, and I could probably eat pizza for 2 or 3 weeks straight, but at some point I'm going to want something other than pizza, right? And so, so that's really just like anybody who is out there that that wants to achieve partner status or whatever. Like I said, you should only be streaming on Twitch because it's fun for you, because you enjoy doing it. Everything else is just bonus. I feel like I duped Twitch into partnering me still to this day, but I have imposter syndrome. That's my own business to deal with. I was very fortunate in that Cliffy, shout outs to Cliffy. Cliffy and I became friends through the community, and he in Mario Maker 1 he had reverse 100 ways to die. I'm sure, I don't know if you remember that, where definitely. You have people come on, you're trying to find all the different ways you can kill yourself, and there's like a co-op stream and he wanted to have like a last hurrah for Mario Maker 1 before Mario Maker 2 came out, where it was last June, and it was me, it was Pooh, it was Panga, and it was Cliffy. And so like suddenly Cliffy like has invited me to the big kids table. Right. And I'm like, are you kidding? Like, I'm at the time an affiliate, and he's like, no, come play Reverse 100 Ways to Die with us. And so like suddenly I get this massive exposure, sure. beyond what I was getting at the time. And so like there are people like Charisse who there are people who are regular mainstays in my chat now that found out about me from Cliffy, that watched Cliffy stream, started watching me stream, and so like I will always, for as thankful as I am to Barb, for him giving me that opportunity with Grand Prix World 1 and Grand Prix World 2 and how that led to other opportunities for me. I don't think that my path to partnership would have been nearly as successful if it weren't for that catalyst for him letting me come play Reverse 100 Ways, getting me out there in front of a wider audience. And then from that, it snowballed into Mario Maker 2 came out, shortly, at the end of that month. I had levels played at like GDQs and stuff like that. So my name was floating out there. And I realized, I'm like, Mario Maker 2 is coming out. I just had that huge influx of viewership from Reverse 100 Ways to Die. Now is the strike while the iron. I saw that opportunity, and I'm like, if I stick with it, if I stick out Mario Maker and I just, pedal to the metal, I think I could get right. that number, and it was finally at start of January of this year that I was like looking back over the history, because it had told me that I had achieved the path to partnership with the Twitch metrics like in the month after Reverse 100. I mean, I'm like, that's wow. just Reverse 100 Ways to Die. Right. I had that one spike. It triggered their bots to say that I had achieved but I was like, no, I need to see consistent viewership over a couple of months. So I deliberately abstained from applying because I was like, no, I don't want there to be a doubt in question in my numbers. It'd be like, oh, you only have those numbers because you're getting rated every time you stream or whatever, And so, like I said, I saw that opportunity. All of those things aligned. If Mario Maker 2 hadn't come out, if I hadn't had that interaction with Cliffy, if all of those other pieces hadn't fallen into place, I don't think it would have worked out for me the same way. And so, like I said, just very lucky that it all came together that way. And
I think it's perfectly fine to admit too that there's luck involved in this as well. And so but as a member of somebody who's been watching you, it's I got to tell you, it's exciting to see somebody go from this to that.
Luck is often disguised as hard work, and so
well, you're working your ass off.
You have to. You have to be willing to put in the time, but it's insert sports metaphor here, exactly. Like you're only gonna get a chance to swing at the ball and hit it and hit a home run if you're willing to keep stepping up to the plate. You're only gonna make more shots if you're willing to and so you gotta take some swings at things. They're not always gonna work out, but you gotta keep swinging, and eventually you're gonna hit something.
I can't thank you enough for spending so much time and kind of geeking out on some of this stuff, but taking the deep dive, because it's a fascinating journey. And I think folks, I might share some during this podcast, some of the music, because it's wonderful. Some of the stuff from Mario Maker and all the Legend of Mario, Grand Prix. I mean, all these. There's so much great music you've composed over now we're in years now at this point. If people want to come watch your stream, where can people find you on the internet?
Oh, I'm on the twitch.tv/composer. You got to get the underscore in there, COM_POSER. I have somebody in my chat who has been cataloging all of my VODs, and he's working on editing them together. I'm hoping here within, maybe the next 20, 30 days. I've been making this joke, I've been making this reference all 2020, so I'm sure there's people in your chat are lolling right now or something, but The joke has been YouTube soon, TM, for a while now, but hopefully here we'll have some videos up on YouTube here pretty soon for my anniversary stream. We went out, did a playthrough all of my Mario Maker 1 levels, and so we're getting those all edited down so that people that maybe didn't know about me until Mario Maker 2 can go see the Mario Maker 1 stuff. And so we got YouTube coming up. I got some music for a couple of games that should be coming out this year. And so, but yeah, for right now it's twitch.tv/composer, and then relatively soon come to Twitch, and maybe I'll have a link for you for YouTube. Fingers crossed for me.
I'm really glad to hear that, because I don't want to be that guy, but like when you search your screen name on YouTube, you get everyone else playing your levels. There's absolutely nothing like my kids exist on YouTube. What's going on?
That sort of harkens back to the composer is terrible at social media stuff. It's like that's the thing about there's streaming on Twitch, is there's all the stuff that you have to do outside of Twitch.
Oh my God, yes.
And there's only so many hours in a day, and when I'm I could be working on a piece of music that's like a 90-second piece of music, and it could take me 20 hours to work on that piece of music. And so it comes down to that. There's only so much time in the day to guess. And so I've been fortunate to have some people that are trying to help me, prod me along, push me over that hump, and, get me where I need to be. But, with what I'm doing right now for Chris Tales, for the JRPG that's coming out this year, is, I like that game is an exposure of my music on the grandest scale that I've ever had it, right? And so like the importance that I feel to have that music represent my best product, because like we're going from, maybe several hundreds, maybe several thousands of people knowing about me to suddenly several million, possibly, And so, now has sort of become the time where it's like, for as much as I want to still reinvest in Twitch and get YouTube up and running, like it's constant. There's a million plates wobbling around me, and like I'm just trying to do my best to keep one spinning, keep them spinning. And so yeah, like I said, but it's nothing to complain about. It's just a lot of stuff to get to, and not a lot of time to get to it, and so.
Well, I appreciate you keeping your sanity and still continuing to stream during all this stuff. Yeah. It's pretty crazy. So.
Laughter helps to make the tears taste less bitter, for sure.
Exactly. I do want to also quick shout out to Composer does have a cat cam. If you're at all interested, if cats are your thing, it's pretty awesome. I'm a dog person myself, but I do love pets. So the fact that we get to see one on stream is pretty awesome as well. I love it.
I am a pet person in general. Like people out there that are like, I am a dog person, but I hate cats or whatever. And I'm like, how can you even say like every dog, every cat is different, So you can have some really cool cats, you can have some really terrible cats or whatever. But we happen to have cats right now. They're the easiest for us to manage and still travel and not travel this year, but
Yeah, right. Exactly.
In general. But yes, my cats are adorable, and it's about time they started earning their rent for and so I was watching Glitch Cat, and I saw Glitch Cat one day had cat cam, and I'm like, of course, like they want to lay in the office with me when I'm working. I'm like, of course, let's put a camera on them, like and look, if you want to come watch my stream for me, that's great. If you only come to my stream because that's fine. Like I'm just happy to have stop by, say hi. I've had people come in, they're like, whatever, I'm subbed for the cats, I'm here for the cats, turn on the cat. That's fine.
No judgment, no judgment passed.
All are welcome. Yeah.
Well, thanks again, man. I really do appreciate you taking the time, and thanks for doing this. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. I appreciate you having me. Like, I'm sure we. I don't know. I think that I'm terrible at wrapping things up, but yeah, thanks so much.
This is why I have a pre-recorded outro bumper, because I can't wrap anything up to save my life. So we'll just keep chatting. That's the whole thing. Thanks everyone for listening and watching. If you're enjoying the podcast, subscribe, leave a review. All those things go a long way to helping out the podcast. If you'd like to continue the conversation, I'm on Twitter @LatMackey, or you can also join the LatMackey Discord, where we have a sequence break channel. We talk about guests, we have questions. It's really interactive, really fun. Please feel free to stop on by. Thanks so much. See you in the next one.